Welcome back. Today I will be doing a modification to the exhaust on my 2020 Honda CRF250L. This is the stock spark arrestor, and this is a Yoshimura aftermarket spark arrestor. It is just a, from what I can see, just a generic model that you could put into anything. There's the part number for you. You can find where to purchase one with that number. The reason why I'm doing this is to try and get a little bit of extra breathability and performance out of the exhaust, because the factory exhaust, here is a really bad illustration. There are 3 chambers. The exhaust first comes into the forwardmost chamber, then goes through a pipe to the rearmost chamber, then back to the center chamber, and then out. So in this would be the rearmost chamber, that would be the middle chamber, and then the first chamber would be up here. You can see that the exhaust gases have to take quite a long path and change directions a lot to get out of the bike. Where what this would do is sit in such a way that this whole thing is only in that final chamber, or sorry, the rearmost chamber. So the exhaust gases would go into the first one, into the farthest one, and then relatively straight out the bike. If you're trying to do this the full proper way, you should pair this with a fuel controller, but the bike has enough flexibility in the tuning that this won't make too much of a difference in terms of the tuning. Not only that, but going to this from that is not that large of a jump. So, as you can probably see, this does not look like this. This has a more square flange with some bolt holes. That's just a circle. So to make this part fit the bike, I need to make a custom flange that I'll make out of this. This is 304 stainless, 6" by 6", and it's 90 thou thick, which is roundabouts 3 millimeter. And then I also got some slightly longer bolts to use, because the stock ones are probably going to be just a little bit too short, because the flange on the stock one and the flange on this aftermarket one are slightly different. This one is very slightly thicker, as well as I'm adding 90 thousandths for the new flange. So this is an M6 by 1 by 16 millimeter, and it is 316 stainless, so that's pretty much as corrosion resistant as it gets with stainlesses. And it has the serrated flange to try and keep it from backing out, because on a single cylinder, and especially on the exhaust of a single cylinder engine, they vibrate quite a lot. Here are the measurements for the flange. The bolt holes center to center are about 51 millimeters. The center hole to get around this tube right here has to be about 36 millimeters. It's going to be a little, I don't know, it'll have to be massaged a little bit, because this complex curve here is not going to just fit a straight 36 millimeter hole. And the last measurement is that the width from one side to the other, it is for the most part square, is 65 millimeters. So with those dimensions right there, you should be able to make your own without any issue. Here's my template. You can see, I take that back. That was the one, that was my first one that didn't fit quite right. This is a much better one. You can see it fits up pretty well. And keep in mind, this does not have to be perfect. As long as the bolt holes are in the correct position and the center bore is large enough to get around the pipe, and it's not so big that it doesn't fit into the end of the muffler anymore, it will work just fine. The overall shape doesn't really matter too much. And this will go on like that, and then be bolted down. I'm not going to show making this, because all it is a little bit of cutting, grinding, and drilling. So I will meet you at the bike with this finished part. At the tail of the bike, to get to the spark arrestor and final tailpipe, you do have to take off this decorative cover, and that has 3 of these, I think, M4 bolts. They have a 3 millimeter hex. Be very careful when trying to remove these, because they are stuck in there quite firmly, and you can easily strip out that 3 millimeter Allen. So you take those off, and then the cover comes right off very easily. One tip to get this top one off more easily, remove this bolt up here, and that will allow this whole plastic shield, or plastic and metal shield, to flex up a little bit, and you can get to that one a lot better. Once you get into this, obviously there are those 4 bolts that will hold it into place. They have an 8mm head. They are not very long, and as soon as you get those 4 out, which are not in all that tight, the stock spark arrestor comes straight out. As promised, here is my adapter flange. I decided to not put in those extra, I don't know what you want to call them, those undercuts, mainly because I forgot how annoying stainless steel is to work with. And by the time I got this far, I just was done with it, and it's already functional. And this is definitely not my best work, but you know what? It's in a place where no one's going to see it. I don't really care that much. And then when you place this in here and you get the bolt holes lined up, there are 2 things that are important, both getting this new spark arrestor aligned properly in translation, which is left, right, up, and down, and then also rotation. That way this hole lines up with this hole in the, the most aesthetically pleasing way. It'll get exhaust gases out no matter what, but if you want it to look half decent, definitely make sure you get it lined up properly. Again, I'm using these 316 stainless steel bolts that are flange with the serrations, and these have a 10mm head instead of an 8mm head, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. The thing you want to be careful with is when you order your fasteners, make sure that the head size is also a size that you have somewhere else on the bike, because let's just say there's not a single 13mm bolt on this bike, and now you're putting on 13mm headed bolts. Now that's one more tool you're going to have to carry with you in your toolkit. So if you can keep everything as consistent as possible with the factory fasteners, it will make maintenance much easier down the road. I think I got that first try. I would say that alignment is pretty good. I'm happy with that. At this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, Casey, why don't you start it up and we can hear the sound difference between the stock one and this? Or, Casey, go take it for a drive and tell us if you feel a power difference at all. Well, I'm not going to do either of those things right now, because let me show you what it looks like outside. Yeah, not the best conditions to be riding in. It's also very cold out right now, and I would rather not be out there freezing to death on a motorcycle. So that's why I'm not going to take it for a ride. Another reason I'm not going to take it for a ride is because I want to wait till this engine is out of the break-in period to put anything aftermarket in the engine. I want to leave everything bone stock until at least 300 or maybe even 600 miles. The other reason why I'm not just going to start it up and hear the difference is because I don't want to run this engine just for a couple seconds and then turn it off, because that'll make moisture build up in the exhaust system, and that's not good for the exhaust system, and it's not good for the bike, especially again in break-in period. These bikes are usually pretty good these days. Really they all are as far as break-in. They're kind of pre-run and from the factory, but you still don't want to chance anything if you don't have to. So that'll be it for this video. I know this was a little shorter and not a whole lot of detail, but I will revisit this later in the year when I can actually get a chance to ride it and we can get a sound comparison of the original versus this one that I made up. So until the next video, see ya.